Cruise news time. Well, Alaska is not done yet. Big news coming out of the Senate yesterday that may mean there will be cruises in Alaska this summer. And there's a crazy wrestling type back and forth going on here in Florida between the governor and Frank Del Rio. And we got great news about masks yesterday. Will it translate to cruise ships? And who will eventually have to wear masks? Will the vaccinated have to wear masks? Will the unvaccinated have to wear masks on cruise ships? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lido, Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. Well, happy freaking Friday. We made it to the end of another week, and for the most part, this has been a week of very positive cruise news, and there's no signs that it's stopping. We are waiting for a couple big stories to resolve. Particularly, we're waiting for the ruling from the judge here in Tampa, Florida, about the lawsuit between Florida, Alaska, and Texas versus the CDC. State sued a cruise. We don't know what the judge is going to say, but we keep on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, a lot of stuff is popping off, and I'm going to give you the stuff that's popping off. Let me quickly invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you love staying up to date with everything going on in that cruise life, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. All right, let's kick it off with this great news for Alaska Cruises. Senator Murkowski has been working tirelessly over the last few months to get her bill, the Alaska Tourism Restoration Act, passed. And the nuts and bolts of that thing, the big piece of it is that this would provide for an exemption for the Passenger Vessel Services Act, which would allow cruise ships to cruise from one U.S. port directly to another U.S. port without needing to stop in a foreign country. For example, cruise ships could cruise from Seattle up to Alaska and then back to Seattle without getting in any trouble with the government. And like I said, Senator Murkowski working tirelessly, working to build bipartisan support for this bill, and it passed the Senate yesterday. Let me throw up the tracker. Do you remember the tracker when you can tell what's going on with a bill? Well, look at this. It moved off of introduced and it says passed Senate. And so the next step of the process is it moves to the House of Representatives, where it will also have to pass, and then it can be signed into law. So really we are early in the process, but we've gotten over the first hurdle, and hopefully the bipartisan sentiment that Senator Murkowski built in the Senate, hopefully that will carry over in the House, and we will see some relief for Alaska cruising. It's not a done deal yet. We're not at the finish line, but man, this is the most movement that this thing's had since it started. So exciting times, possible reason to be hopeful for Alaska. This thing went quick. It moved from committee to the Senate floor and got voted on all yesterday. So hopefully we see the same expeditiousness when it gets to the House. I will keep you informed. Exciting. Now, probably my favorite cruise news story of the week, only because the way it plays out in my mind, is the back and forth between Norwegian Cruise Line CEO Frank Del Rio and the governor here in Florida, Governor Ron Desantis. Did I just say Florida? Florida, here, Ron Desantis. It feels like a wrestling promo. There's so much machismo between these two dudes. They probably both have fast sports cars, and they want to compare them. It's an interesting conversation. It all started last week when Frank Del Rio was asked, hey, you've said you want to cruise with 100% vaccinated. We know in Florida, the governor there has passed a rule, made a law that said you can't ask. What are you going to do about that? What do you think, Frank Del Rio? And Frank Del Rio, he said, look, what's Florida? You know, we got cruise ships. They got motors. I'm paraphrasing. They got motors and rudders, and we can go to other places. We don't need Florida, essentially. Go find the quotes. It's pretty interesting, but that is the nuts and bolts of it. He said, yeah, we'll go somewhere else to cruise. What do you think about that? And then yesterday, Governor DeSantis was asked about Norwegian's threat to leave Florida. And I'll paraphrase, Governor DeSantis also. He was like, who's Norwegian? Are they even a cruise line? He didn't say, are they even a cruise line? He said, aren't they small? I mean, are you talking about that small niche cruise line, Norwegian? Look, we got Royal Caribbean and we got Carnival down here in Florida. Who's NCL? He knows who NCL is, and Frank Del Rio knows that Florida is important. Again, it's these boys bucking up, trying to have a little bit of war of words over their different ideologies, which is fine, but it's just kind of funny to me. It does seem a little bit WWE. Like I was expecting The Rock to come out in the middle of it and ask him if they could smell what he's cooking. I don't know. Norwegian has to cruise from Florida. Don't be silly, Del Rio. And you know who Norwegian is, Governor Ron. Be interesting to see how that plays out. I think that's probably the most amusing cruise news story for me this week, to watch these big boys go at it. Now let's get to the juicy tidbits. If that one wasn't juicy enough, hopefully all the people that live in the political realm aren't all like on the chip because we talked about Governor Ron and Frank Del Rio. But let's move over to something even more juicy with a whole nother set of people that like to get on the chip. Let's talk about what the CDC said yesterday. The evil CDC, ooh, or the good CDC, yay. Let's talk about the CDC, what they said yesterday. They came out and said, look, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask in most circumstances, indoors or outdoors. Now, they still made some provisions for some forms of transportation in really big crowds, but for the most part, it was a cheerful exclamation of, if you are vaccinated, live your life. And a lot of people celebrated, and the question that all of us cruisers had, well, okay, we like that. Are they going to come out and say, go cruising, live your life. If you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask inside or outside. Now, they didn't say that. Let's get that straight. They didn't say that. And let me remind you how the timeline worked on the previous guidance. About a month ago, they told people living their lives at home that if you were fully vaccinated, you could start taking the mask off outside and doing some things without restrictions. And then it took like a full month, just this week, that same guidance essentially came to the cruise line. So we are waiting to see if the guidance for cruise lines change when it comes to masking indoors. But it leaves us in a quandary. They're touting it. It's a benefit. It's a carrot for people who have been vaccinated. But we know that possibly 30% of the population is not going to get vaccinated. And if that is representative of who will be on cruise ships, you're going to have cruise ships that are partially vaccinated. Unless you're a Norwegian Cruise Line. They want to do 100% vaccination, but we haven't heard that from other big cruise lines like Carnival and Royal in the United States. And so you could end up in a scenario where you got a cruise that is 70% vaccinated, 30% unvaccinated. Who has to wear the mask? That's my question. Who has to wear the mask? I guess you could say that one approach is that if you don't know that everybody is vaccinated on your cruise ship, then the rule should be that everybody has to wear the mask. But I can tell you what, the 70% that don't have to wear the mask because they're vaccinated, they're not going to be happy about it. And so is it fair that the 70% have to wear the mask for the 30%? Now, we know from 2020 that there's a great many people out there that don't want to wear the mask for anybody else. And so should the unvaccinated be asking the vaccinated to wear the mask? And you know the unvaccinated, they're not going to want to wear the mask either. So what does the cruise line do? This is a tough choice. Let me just do a quick story time to illustrate this. Back in the day, I worked as somebody who administered email for a corporation. I worked for a small company. We had about 100 people. And it was that time when email was starting to make its way onto the mobile phone, and everybody loved BlackBerry. So it took us about 6 months and a lot of requests to get $150,000 to stand up a BlackBerry email server for these 100 people that worked at this company. So we had to get the BlackBerries, we had to get the back end so that we could send email to the BlackBerries. And almost at the very end of that project, we got everybody their BlackBerry. There was one hotshot salesman who went to a conference and saw somebody getting their email on their iPhone. And so he came back from that conference, he threw his BlackBerry on my little IT desk and said, I don't want this. I'm giving this back because I just went and bought this iPhone. The dude was holding an iPhone. Like, we literally gave him the BlackBerry the previous week. We got his email working, secure email. He threw it on my desk and held up his iPhone and said, I want my email on this. And I was like, well, I don't have any way to put your email on that securely in a way that it can't be stolen. And he was like, I don't care. I do a lot of sales for this company. I am the man. You will get my email on this iPhone. Be nice to your IT people. It really is the magic. You certainly know when the network is down. You don't have to be a jerk because you're a salesperson and because you're talking to a younger person. That's an aside. And I said, well, hey, let me work on it. You know, because that's what we do. We always say yes until there's a definitive no. Let me work on it. And he's like, well, you better just get, all right. So I go to my boss and I'm like, look, there's this one guy out of the 100 that wants me to figure out how to get secure email on his iPhone. And of course, my boss is a little seasoned in IT at that point, dealt with this person before, and basically said, no, we don't build solutions for exceptions. We manage the exceptions. And so my boss and I scheduled a meeting with that salesperson. We included his boss, and we all got together in a conference room where I was able to hand him back his BlackBerry and explain to him that we just spent $150,000, that we would be using this technology until the service contract ran out on the phones that we just purchased, and that's the way it was going to be. We were not going to implement a whole other set of technology just for one person. What's the cruise lines going to do? If you've got 1,000 people on the cruise ship and 300 of them aren't vaccinated, are they going to mask the 700, or are they going to do something different to manage the exception? Out of Florida, if you can't ask someone's vaccine status to allow them to cruise, well, on the cruise ship, can you have a carrot that says, hey, if you want to show us that you're vaccinated, you can take off the mask? Is that where we're going? And if that's the place that we're going, how angry will people be if you have part of the people that have to wear a mask and part of the people that don't wear a mask? I guess you can just crassly say, well, it's on them. They should have got vaccinated. But hey, we're dealing with people here, and it never hurts to be gracious. Everybody can be a jerk. How many people can be gracious? It's a quandary. I can't wait to see how the cruise lines solve it. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. I just thought it would be fun to talk about. What do you guys think? How will we solve this problem? And can we cheer for Alaska? And who would win in a wrestling match between Frank Del Rio and Governor Desantis? Leave a comment below. Thank you so much for watching the show today. Please hit the like button or I will hit you with the people's elbow. You don't want that. This is Tony for Lido Loca. Have a great weekend. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.